Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Armenia and Azerbaijan have agreed to refrain from deliberately targeting civilians in a conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. The agreement was reached during talks in Geneva between foreign ministers of both sides and envoys from France, Russia and the United States. Hundreds of people have been killed in more than a month of fighting in the region. The death toll from 7 magnitude earthquake in Turkey and Greece has risen to 26, while over 800 are injured. Ankara has reported 24 fatalities, while 2 people died in Greece. Rescue operations are underway as several buildings collapsed in Turkish city of Izmir. Tanzania's President John Magufuli has won the presidential election. The Electoral Commission says the incumbent president got 12.5 million votes, equivalent to 84%. Magufuli's main challenger, Tundu Lissu, has rejected the results as fraud and called for protests. The COVID-19 infections tally in the United States has topped 9 million with more than 229,000 deaths. India has recorded 551 deaths and over 48,000 cases overnight as the country's caseload crosses 8 million. In Pakistan, 11 people have lost their lives to the virus, with the death toll exceeding 6,800. Globally, coronavirus has claimed over 1.18 million lives and infected more than 45.4 million people. Well, these were the headlines of this hour. News in detail coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. Armenia and Azerbaijan have agreed to refrain from deliberately targeting civilians in a conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The agreement was reached during talks in Geneva between foreign ministers of both sides and envoys from Russia, France and the United States. In a statement, the co-chairs of the Minsk group said Armenia and Azerbaijan have agreed to exchange the bodies of fighters. It said lists of detained prisoners of war will also be provided within a week, with the aim of an eventual exchange. Earlier, human rights groups called for an immediate halt to the use of banned weapons by Armenia. Hundreds of people have been killed in more than a month of fighting in the region. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says India is a fascist state inspired by Nazis. In an interview, Khan said India is a threat to all of its neighbors. He said just like how the Nazis wanted to get rid of the Jews, the RSS wants to rid India of Muslims. Khan said Pakistan wants the United States to treat Islamabad and New Delhi equally on the Kashmir dispute. The Prime Minister said Pakistan has no favourites in Afghanistan. He added his country's only interest is any future government in Kabul does not allow India to operate against it. To a question, Khan said Pakistan can never recognise Israel unless there is a just settlement as per the relevant United Nations resolutions. About US elections, he said President Donald Trump is very unpredictable despite trailing Joe Biden in opinion polls. Now, the Afghan Defense Ministry says security forces have killed 12 Taliban after they attacked checkposts in Faryab province. In a statement, it said 3 strongholds of the Taliban were also destroyed in the clashes in the Kaisar district. A Defense Ministry spokesperson said the Taliban attacked forces checkpoints in 28 provinces over the past 24 hours. He added the government forces repelled their attacks and inflicted heavy casualties to them. The Taliban are yet to respond to the claims. The spike in violence comes as the Taliban and the Kabul administration are working on the framework of peace talks in Doha. Now, the death toll from the earthquake in Turkey and Greece has risen to 26, while over 800 others are injured. A 7-magnitude quake with an epicenter in the Aegean Sea rattled the two countries, causing several buildings to collapse. The shallow tremor also triggered a mini tsunami that flooded the Turkish city of Izmir and Greek island of Samos. Ankara has reported 24 fatalities so far, while search and rescue operations are underway in at least 12 buildings. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says the government has mobilized all the means for rescue efforts. Erdogan also thanked Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who called him to offer assistance. Athens has recorded 2 deaths on the Samos island when some teenagers were buried under the debris of a building. The U.S. Geology Survey says the quake struck at a depth of 10 kilometers. Turkey and Greece both sit on fault lines, and earthquakes are common there. Now, in the United States, in the final burst of campaigning, President Donald Trump and his challenger Joe Biden have crises crossed Midwestern states. These states may hold the keys to the White House. Details in this report.
The pre-election day voting, either by mail or in person, has skyrocketed amid the coronavirus pandemic. The U.S. Elections Project says 85 million citizens have already cast ballots in the presidential election. Campaigning in the battleground state of Wisconsin, President Donald Trump criticized polling numbers. He said the hidden Trump supporter will turn out and vote for him in greater numbers on November 3rd.
Anyway, this poll, so we're tied. Let's say we're tied. 1 up, 1 down. We're right, boom, very close. I think we're going to take it easily, actually. I think we're going to take it because we're going to have a turnout probably on Tuesday. You know, our people like to vote. They like to vote on Tuesday, not even on Sunday or Monday.
Some 100 supporters of Trump gathered in the northwestern Pennsylvania for a rally before the tally event. On the other hand, speaking to supporters in Iowa, Democrat candidate Joe Biden unleashed on Trump, from his handling of coronavirus to his mental acuity.
And then, when he was told for the first time that we're like we did today, 1,000 deaths a day, remember what his comment was? He said, "It is what it is." Well, it is what it is because he is who he is. That's why it is what it is. These guys are something else, man.
Meanwhile, U.S. astronaut Kate Rubins has voted in the presidential election from space. Rubins said she felt it was her duty to vote.
Moving on, our U.S. has accused Iran-based hackers of targeting its voters' registration database. In a joint statement, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security said the hackers sent threatening emails to thousands of Americans. It said the emails asked voters to change party registration and vote for the U.S. President Donald Trump. The agency said they are aware of an Iranian advanced persistent threat with the actor targeting U.S. state websites. They said this actor was responsible for the voter intimidation emails and for election-related disinformation in mid-October. U.S. officials have been on high alert over the threat of potential foreign interference in the upcoming November 3rd election. Moving on now, in Chile, the anti-government protesters took to the streets of the Santiago and clashed with police. The protest came 6 days after a vote to change the country's constitution. Riot police used tear gas and a water cannon to disperse the crowd. Police say dozens of protesters were arrested. The protest began a little over a year ago to call for reforms to the pension, healthcare and education systems. Meanwhile, Hamas has condemned the U.S. decision of listing Israel as the place of birth for Americans born in Jerusalem. Yesterday, the U.S. Embassy issued the first ever passport to its national listing, its place of birth as Jerusalem, Israel. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced the change in the policy a day earlier. He said Americans born in Jerusalem can now list either Jerusalem or Israel as their birthplace. Hamas spokesperson Hazim Qasim called the move aggression against the Palestinian rights in the occupied Jerusalem. Also, the United States and Sudan have signed an agreement to restore Sudan's sovereignty immunity. Sudan's Justice Ministry said the agreement will settle down the cases against Khartoum in U.S. courts. In a statement, the ministry said the cases include the bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998. It said Sudan has agreed to pay $335 million to the United States victims of the bombing incident. Earlier, President Donald Trump said the U.S. will remove Sudan from their list of state sponsors of terrorism. Washington listed Khartoum as a state sponsoring terrorism when Omar al-Bashir was president. Sudan has also become the third Arab country to normalize ties with Israel, mediated by the United States. Libya's Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj has withdrawn his decision to resign. Government spokesman Ghalib al-Zaklai said Sarraj will remain in office until the ongoing intra-Libyan political dialogue comes to an end. In an interview, Sarraj said he took the decision in response to repeated demands to avoid the political vacuum in Libya. This comes a day after Libya's High Council of State urged Sarraj to stay until a new presidential council is selected. Earlier, the UN, Tripoli's parliament and Germany urged Sarraj to postpone resignation for Libya's higher interests. Earlier in September, Sarraj, who leads the Presidential Council, announced to transfer his powers to the executive branch by the end of October. Now, Algerians are set to vote tomorrow on a new constitution. The government sees the referendum as a key part of its strategy to move beyond last year's popular unrest. Hospitalized President Abdelmajid Tebboune has pushed the referendum to quell the mass protests that ousted his predecessor. The new constitution will limit presidents to 2 terms, giving more powers to the parliament and judiciary. It will also allow the army to intervene outside the country's borders. Despite Abdelaziz's ouster, the protest movement has failed to achieve its goal of an overhaul of the political system. Now moving on to Tanzania, where the President, John Magufuli, has won the presidential election. The Electoral Commission says the incumbent president got 12.5 million votes, equivalent to 84%. The Commission said Magufuli's main challenger, Tundu Lissu of the Chadema party, bagged 1.9 million votes. Lissu has rejected the election as fraud and called for protest. The US says the irregularities and the overwhelming margins of victory raise serious doubts about the credibility of the result. A spokesperson for the State Department said the US will hold responsible individuals accountable. The vote in the African country was marred by allegations of arrests of candidates and the protesters. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the COVID-19 infections tally in the United States has topped 9 million, with more than 229,000 deaths. Globally, coronavirus has claimed over 1.18 million lives and infected more than 45.4 million people. More details in this report.
It has almost been a year that the first case of COVID-19 was detected, but at no point over the year the world saw a sign of relief. The virus keeps breaking all records of devastation. As Latin America's death toll nears 400,000, most leaders in the region worry countries can soon face a battering second wave. Peru, with around 34,000 deaths, has one of the highest fatality rates per capita in the world. The winter surge of the second wave of the coronavirus has created an operational tsunami in much of the European region. Belgium recently has been reporting twice as many daily cases as France. It also has one of Europe's highest mortality rates. Italy exceeded 30,000 daily infections for the first time, while German hospitals warn of resources shortage. In Spain, public clashed with the lockdown police to protest the curbs, as they say they are left at the mercy of the local food banks to feed their families. Over in India, authorities recorded 551 deaths and over 48,000 cases overnight. The country's infection tally has exceeded 8.1 million with over 121,000 deaths.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 11 COVID-19 deaths and 807 cases overnight. The Health Ministry says the country's death toll has reached 6,806. The ministry said there are over 12,000 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of nearly 333,000 countrywide cases, more than 314,000 have recovered so far. Meanwhile, Federal Minister for Planning Development Asad Umar has sought citizens' help for the compliance of SOPs. In a tweet, Umar urged people to take pictures wherever they see violations of rules and send them to the authorities. Well, now Brazil's Vice President Hamilton Mourão says the government will buy a Chinese COVID-19 vaccine that is being tested in the country. This comes after President Jair Bolsonaro said the federal government will not buy vaccines from China's Sinovac. In an interview, Mourão said Bolsonaro's stance was without substance. He said the government has already put the resources to produce this vaccine and will not run away from that. Meanwhile, the EU says any vaccine in the territory of the bloc will have to comply with approval procedures. At a press conference, the European Commission spokesperson Eric Mamer said all member states have signed up to this European vaccine strategy. Mamer added Brussels is not in negotiations with either Russia or Chinese companies earlier. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán said Budapest was talking with Russia and China for shots as early as December. Meanwhile, at least 7 people have been killed in a landslide sparked by heavy rains in El Salvador. Government says more than 30 others are missing under a deluge of mud. The mudslide hit the village of Los Angelitos after heavy rains loosened the earth on the flanks of the San Salvador. Civil Protection Agency says the landslide carved a route for 4 kilometers, sweeping mud, rocks and tree trunks in the path. Interior Minister Mario Duran called the situation difficult and said around 35 people were buried in the slide. Soldiers with a sniffer dog are working alongside fire crews and civilians to try to unearth the survivors. South Korean officials have released videos warning residents about virus resurgence ahead of the Halloween weekend. Details in this report.
Halloween this year should have been ripe with possibilities, but unfortunately, the holiday is happening in the midst of a pandemic. In a bid to contain COVID-19 transmission, officials in South Korea's capital city of Seoul are warning citizens with creative posters and videos. They have advised people to host Halloween parties online.
Seoul City, along with Justice Ministry, National Police Agency, and Ministry of Food and Drug Safety will expand the joint inspection team into 24 groups with 140 officials and will intensively check dancing clubs today and tomorrow.
Don't end up a real ghost while enjoying Halloween, reads the caption on one poster in Seoul. Another warned this year's party could really turn scary. Some 14 nightclubs have already been shut after failing to adhere to social distancing guidelines.
The city plans to reap immediate results from infectious disease prevention measures by ordering a 2-week ban on gatherings for the facilities that violate the guidelines from the next day.
South Korea has been praised for quick recovery and effective action against the COVID-19 pandemic, but it saw a resurgence in cases in May after an outbreak linked to nightclubs and bars in Seoul.
Now in Brazil, a theatre has opened new outdoor space for drama lovers to attend productions despite the coronavirus pandemic. More details in this report.
In the car park of the Arthur Azevedo Theatre, spectators sit in small plastic cabins to watch the play Bulletin Protocol by Bendita Troupe. Protocol is the first live performance to open with an audience in Sao Paulo since the COVID-19 outbreak.
I am loving it. I was feeling an abstinence from art, music, everything. And when the theatre returned together with the museums, which we have now reopened, this is incredible.
Even though the City Hall allowed all theatres to reopen earlier this month, less than 10 did so. The actors wear face masks and do not touch each other, interrupting their movements in the air just before touching their fellow actors.
We are here not exactly proving anything, but showing a prototype, an example that it is possible to do theatre before the vaccine arrives, with all the safety protocols so that public feels safe and can access the theatre.
The production is an adaptation of the 17th century play Bulletin, written by British playwright Ben Jonson, a contemporary of Shakespeare. Troupe's version refers to the new coronavirus pandemic.
Now, Japan's aerospace manufacturer Mitsubishi Heavy Industries says it will freeze development of its SpaceJet regional aircraft. The company says it took the decision to put the focus on renewable energy and other businesses in a bid to bolster profits. In a statement, Mitsubishi said they will make improvements and assess possible program restarts. It said the decision will allow the company to halve jobs in the commercial aviation business, helping it save $1.15 billion. The company said it will cut 2,000 jobs at the overseas units and reassign 3,000 people internally to cut costs. Long delayed, the Mitsubishi SpaceJet has missed 6 delivery deadlines since 2013. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.